Hello and welcome. This is an introductory class, and before we move on to making any sketch, I'll want to quickly talk about these things you see around the screen. Those are tools. Basically, they are tools, and you use them to create whatever you want to create in this white portion, this environment. This is like the artist canvas, and this place is called the model space. Before we go on to add one thing or the other to this model space, it's important you note that this portion is where you have access to commands. Commands are instructions that you, the user, gives to the computer. So let's say you want to create a circle. You need to go to the command in the appropriate location where you can tell the computer, this is what I want. I want to create a circle. So if you want to create a line, you go to where you can give the computer an instruction to launch the tool for you to create a line. The ribbon is organized into tabs. You have Home tab, Insert tab, and many other tabs. So for each tab you select, you see different icons. Those icons are commands. We've talked about commands. Commands being instructions you give to the computer. So if you want to create a shape, you usually go to the Home tab and to the Draw panel because you want to create. If you want to modify, you go to the Modify panel. If you want to add text or dimensions, you go to Annotation panel. Now, the annotation you see here is quite brief. If you want more commands under Annotation, you go to Annotate tab instead of going to Annotation panel in the Home tab. So if you click Annotate tab, you see more commands and tools you can use to do your work here. So return to the Home tab. Then below the ribbon we have what is called the Files tab. You can quickly switch from one drawing to the other by clicking the tab you want to access. And below the model space, down here we have what is called the command line or command window. When you've launched a command, let's say a circle, if I click a circle, you see AutoCAD gives me a prompt to proceed with the creating of the circle in the command line. So it tells me what I should do in order to complete the request I have made. In this case, I want to create a circle, so AutoCAD says specify center point for circle. Whenever you see the cursor having this appearance and this kind of information are displayed in the command line, you are required to click a place in your model space. And of course, you should use your left mouse button. Usually you use your left mouse button for selection and you use your right mouse button for options. So in this case, I'm going to click, that is using my left mouse button. And now you see that the information displayed in the command line has changed. AutoCAD says specify radius of the circle or diameter. If I don't know the radius but I know the diameter of the circle, I can proceed to click here to enter the diameter. So let's enter the diameter 100 units. Just type 100 on the keyboard and hit enter. So there you see we've created a circle, and the command line gives us a guide on what to do in order to complete whatever command we have launched. We'll talk about customization of some of these sections you've seen later. But for now, just know that this is where you launch several commands you ever need in AutoCAD. You can launch the commands by typing also. You don't have to go here every time. but it will take a while before you memorize all the commands well enough to be able to launch it by typing. So for instance, if I didn't want to go to the drop panel and launch circle like I did, I can just type circle and then hit enter. So it basically brings up the same option that we saw previously. I'll hit escape now, and then we talk about the region below the command line, and that is the layout model space switch. Layout is the environment that gives you a virtual paper, like the paper you are going to print your work on. So it's also called paper space, and this other side is called model space. Paper space because it gives you a virtual paper to work with. You can add your title block, you can make whatever modifications you need to appear on the paper when printed. So then your model space is where you do the actual drawing. You don't do drawing to actual sizes in the layouts. If you are going to have any content in the layout, it should be stuff that will generally text or your title block, those kind of things. But you should never try to do modeling in the layout or sketching in the layout. Alright, so after this we have these parts, which they are mode settings. Mode settings generally control the behavior of your drafting environment. So we have different mode settings here. We will not go over them one after the other in this video, but we will use practical instances to show you how those settings can be used. We have some controls that are floating in the model space. These ones over here help you control the viewport. The viewport is like your how you see the drafting environment, the model space. Okay, think of it as a camera. You have an object, you want to view it from different locations. You really need more of the viewport control when you are doing solid modeling. You don't really need it when you are doing 2D modeling, except when you are working with a very complex maybe a plan with so many objects in it, and you want to be able to navigate different sections of it. So the viewport allows you to kind of split the screen. Okay, so if I have the viewport splitting the model space into 4, I can basically maybe zoom into this, work on it, or some other viewport, and you switch from one viewport to the other by just clicking the viewport. We'll go into that in detail later, but for now we'll return to a single viewport. So I return to single viewport. After that, you have the view control. You can switch from top to whatever view you want to work with. Again, this makes sense when you are working with a solid model. For 2D drafting, you don't need to change that. Then after it, you see the visual style controls. Again, this makes sense when you are working with 3D, where you have depth, you have added materials or that kind of a thing to the objects you have modeled. So you can switch from one visual style to the other from here. And over here you have the navigation controls. So most of these controls you see will be helpful when you are doing solid modeling. Then again, before we proceed to actually doing some sketch, I want to talk about this part here. It's called the quick access toolbar. So this is where you can quickly create a new drawing, save your drawing, or plot your drawing. There are some commands that are not shown here in the quick access toolbar, and they are collapsed. So if you click the arrow down button here, you can select a command to add to that list. So for instance, if we click workspace, we can have that added to the quick access toolbar. We can remove something. Let's say if we want to remove save to web and mobile, we click that, you see it disappears from the quick access toolbar. So whatever you do to this the top portion of this drafting environment, remember that you want to have as much space here as possible. At the same time, you need information that will help you work faster and not get confused. So at a certain point when you become a pro, you may not need to show the full ribbon. So if you click this button here, it will minimize the ribbon first to panels. You click it again, it minimizes it into tiles, and then you click it minimizes into tabs only. So but those tools are still there. If you click the home tab, for instance, all the panels will appear, and when you can launch whatever. Let's say you want to erase this circle. If I go to the home tab, this is the erase icon. So if I click on it, I can select the circle, say AutoCAD says erase. This is the command. AutoCAD says erase is the command, and says select object. So I've selected the object by clicking it, and to finish up I'm going to hit enter. Alright, so and then you notice that after launching the erase command, the ribbon automatically collapsed. So that helps you save some space. You have the model space being wider, and it gives you more space to work with. So if you click that place once more, it will return to the full ribbon. The appearance of your work environment can differ depending on whether you want to work with 2D drafting or you want to do solid modeling. Right now, the appearance of your ribbon is suited for drafting and annotation. So in this training, we are going to move quickly from 2D to 3D, so you can appreciate the software better. So over here we have the workspace switch. If we click here, we can basically switch from the drafting and annotation workspace to another one. So if you want to work with basic 3D modeling, you select 3D basics, but I prefer 3D modeling workspace, so you can go ahead to click that. In this environment, you now see commands that allow you carry out solid modeling, and for you to learn this software faster, I recommend that you switch to the 3D modeling workspace. Why? Because in 3D modeling workspace, you have a blend of the tools you have in 2D and 3D. So the draw panel we saw in the drafting and annotation workspace, we still have it here. The modify panel, we still have it here. Okay, so but you now have 3D commands being included as well. So, and that helps a lot. So first task for you, just go ahead now to switch from 2D drafting and annotation workspace to 3D modeling workspace. So remember, you can access the workspace switch by clicking here and selecting workspace in your quick access toolbar, or you go to the mode settings in the status bar. This section is called the status bar. So you click the gear icon here and you can switch your workspace from here as well. So to get started now, let's say we want to create 1-inch angle bar. Let's start with something really practical. 1-inch angle bar, drawing 1-inch angle bar in AutoCAD. So as a general rule, when you want to create something that will be extruded, you want to convert it from 2D to 3D, make sure you use a command called polyline to do your drawing. In AutoCAD we have line, we have polyline. Okay, so when you go to the draw panel in the home tab, you have access to many draw tools. So if you click here, you can launch line command, but we won't be using a line command to create the objects that we are going to extrude, because it will create some problems for us. I'll talk about that in some other video, but for now just proceed to launch polyline command. So AutoCAD says specify start points. Its start points can be anywhere on screen, so just left click to specify start point, then drag your cursor away. Now as a rule of thumb, if you don't have a mouse, like an external mouse, not a mouse, if you are using a laptop computer, you shouldn't use the pad, the mouse pad, okay, because it won't help you work efficiently. So you should consider getting an external mouse if you don't have one already. A 1-inch angle bar is 25.4 millimeters, and for the purpose of this training, except otherwise stated, all our measurements will be in millimeters. I'll go ahead now and enter 25.4 and hit enter. I'll move my cursor to another direction. Now you'll notice the snapping action as I move my cursor from one direction to the other, like I'm basically sweeping my cursor on the pad now. That action is controlled by a mode setting that is called polar tracking. If you don't notice this kind of action in your own application, then check whether your polar tracking is activated. For your mode settings, anyone that is active is blue, anyone that is not active is gray. So polar tracking allows you track, specific angle increments. You can adjust the angle increments here, click the arrow down, and then right now you see I was tracking 30 degrees. If you set it to 45 degrees, it means you'll be adjusting in increments of 45. So here we have 45, 90, and so on. So if you change it to 30 degrees, it will be tracking multiples of 30, 60, and the rest of them. And let's just talk about the mode setting beside it, the auto mode. If we select auto mode, it kind of restricts your movement to 90 degree increments. I generally don't like to use auto mode. Polar tracking is okay, but when you use polar tracking, ensure you also have the object snap tracking active. It helps to keep those settings that way so you can work efficiently. So I'll go ahead now to move my cursor to the next direction and enter 25.4 for the next side. I move the cursor to the top. Let's say we want to give it 3 millimeters in thickness, so I type 3 and then I move the cursor this way. Now this 25, but I'm going to subtract this thickness of 3. So I'm going to subtract this thickness of 3 from 25. 25 minus 3 will give us 22. So I'll type 22, hit enter, and then I'll move my cursor to the top. So you usually want to control the direction of your cursor. Make sure the line is straight. This line is tracked. If it is not tracked, your line will be bent. Ensure your polar tracking is on and is set to the correct angle. With this on, I can go ahead to finish up this by sweeping this point like that. Okay, so what I've just done there is an object snap tracking. Object snap is a mode setting. Okay, ensure it is active. Object snap, there are several object snaps in AutoCAD. If you click the arrow down here, you see different object snaps. Now the one I just used is the endpoint object snap. You also have midpoint, you have center. All these object snaps don't exist in all cases. That is, you can't use them in all cases. For instance, now we are working with lines. You don't expect to see a center on a line, but rather you expect to have endpoints, you expect to have midpoints. Okay, you won't have a quadrant on a line. So the object snaps you are working with depend on the geometry of the object you are working with. So if you have a circle, if you have an arc, yes, you expect to have a center, you have a quadrant. Alright, but if you are working with a line, then you should activate the endpoint, midpoint object snaps if they are not active. And how do you know whether it's active or not? You see the check mark beside it. Okay, anyone that is not with the check mark is not active. I'll just go ahead now and escape, click here. Alright, if I move my cursor to that endpoint and swipe away, okay, move it towards the endpoint, let me zoom in a little bit so that you see clearly. Move to the endpoint like this and swipe out. Move to that point and swipe to the opposite direction. And when you see the tracking lines intersecting like so, you just click, and then for the remaining part of it, you can just click here and enter. Right click and enter, or just press enter on your keyboard. Okay, so if you have gotten to this point, congratulations. If you have not, please go over it again. Let's do it together, but we'll be faster now. I launch polyline command from the draw panel. I pick a start point. AutoCAD says pick a start point. I go this way, 25.4. Enter. Show it this direction, 25.4. Enter. Thickness of 3. You type 3. Enter. We have 25.4 over here, so we're going to subtract 3 from there, and so we have 22.4. Alright, then with our object snap sets, with our polar tracking also, and object snap tracking, okay, you need 1, 2, 3 to be active to do what I've just demonstrated here. So then you move your cursor over here and swipe out. Once you see that track line intersecting, you just click, and then click here again to close up. Or once you click here, AutoCAD will still demand an extra step from you, which is to press enter. But if you don't want to always see that extra step, let's undo. Undo removes the last line segment. Alright, so since we started from here and we moved all the way to this point, we can just select close. So that's one step shorter than the previous. Alright, so if you have that now, then let's proceed to getting our angle bar in solid form. To get it in solid form, you have to switch to a 3-dimensional view. What we are currently seeing is 2-dimensional. We have just 2 dimensions, the X and Y. You see, this is what we call the UCS icon, the user coordinate system icon. Alright, so it gives you an idea about the direction of the X-axis and Y-axis you are working with. This gives us the impression that okay, we are working with 2D. So now we are going to switch to 3D. Go to the view controls here and go southwest isometric. You now see a third axis, the Z-axis. In all instances, Z-axis gives you the depth. Okay, what we were sketching before was on the XY plane. Okay, that was a plane, but now we want to make it solid. We have the third axis, the Z-axis. For us to convert the 2D object now to 3D, we go to Extrude, click Extrude. AutoCAD says select object to extrude. We click on that object and enter. Right click and select enter, or just hit enter on your keyboard. So next thing we are going to do is to enter the extrusion height. So let's say we want it to be 1 inch in length. Okay, that's going to be the length now. So we enter 25.4 as well. Okay, this might look a little bit confusing because all you see are lines. Okay, lines. This kind of visual style is called the 2D wireframe. So when you're creating a solid, you see it in wires, like either of lines and curves if you had a curve in the figure. So but if you want to see it as a real solid, then you want to switch to conceptual or some other visual style that fills the lines you are seeing. So if we go to conceptual, for instance, you see the object now has the appearance of something solid. You no longer see those lines behind you. Now let's try it again on this one. Extrude, select the objects to extrude, and after selecting the object, tell AutoCAD you finished selecting. Press enter and it says specify extrusion height. So this time around, let's enter 50 for the extrusion height. Type 50 and hit enter. It's a little bigger so we can't see it. So what do? We zoom out. If you have your mouse with you, to zoom out, you roll the wheel backwards. That's roll the wheel towards you. That zooms out. If you want to zoom in, roll the wheel away from you. Zooms in. Alright. If you want to move the screen from one direction to the other, just hold down the mouse wheel. You'll see a hand like that. press down the mouse wheel. Once you see that hand the way it is, you now swipe to whatever direction you want it to go. Okay, so lastly, in this video, you usually see this completed command information splashing into the model space. Now, if you never want to see those things, automatically it will hide at some point. But sometimes I find it annoying. Okay, so if you don't want to see it, you basically hold the these grip points on the command window. Hold the grip points, drag it down. Once you notice the long rectangular appearance like that line showing as a rectangle, just release it. Release the left mouse button, and the command window will now be permanently docked somewhere here. So whenever you launch a command, it will no longer be splashing into the screen, but it will be showing somewhere up here. The command line now has two sections, this top one and the bottom one. This shows you the command history, and here you have the computer prompting you to take some action to complete a particular command. So if we launch the circle we launched earlier right now, so you see we still have the prompts over here, and once we pick a start point, enter the diameter, I'm just going to click someplace there. So you see it's no longer splashing in the screen, but everything is contained in this environment. So there you have it. That's the introduction to this environment. In the next video, we are going to take on more advanced exercises, but I advise at the moment, try to practice what you've learned so far, and if you have any questions, do well to leave it in the comment section below. If you like this video, if it's been helpful to you, please consider hitting the like button. Subscribe also if you've not done that already, and share this video with people who have need for something like this. Until next time, do stay well.